My okay. Good evening, everybody. My topic is cardiorenal outcomes with SGLT2 inhibitors and DPP4 inhibitor combination, guiding the choice of agents, a cardiology perspective. These are my disclaimers. The content in this presentation is intended only for healthcare professionals, and this is uh, so. This is uh, uh, this presentation, the views and opinions are that of the speaker alone. And these are my disclosures. So now let us start. So everyone knows about diabetes. It's not a very strange thing. Everybody knows somebody who is diabetic, and everyone knows about diabetes. But the magnitude, because of so much familiarity, the magnitude is less well understood or appreciated. So one way of expressing its magnitude is that one person dies every 6 seconds from diabetes and its complications. So let us count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Somebody has died of diabetes and its complication in the world. As simple as that. And what about India? India and China, it's the brunt of the disease. You can see here, there's a recent publication which showed that if you are overweight and at the age of 20, your chance of developing diabetes is more than 80%. So it's going to be very common, and you are not facing a diabetes epidemic, we are having a diabetes epidemic, and we are having an epidemic of the complications of diabetes. So, patients die of diabetes and complications. So, generally, what you think about the complications? Hafner's paper in late 90s, and he said it is not myocardial infarction equivalent. There's a lot of hue and cry about it, and then people said no, maybe not. It may be a cardiovascular disease equivalent. So, but we know that the importance of cardiovascular disease or vascular disease in diabetes. And generally, people are divided into primary and secondary prevention, those who have atherosclerotic vascular disease, and maybe at risk of atherosclerotic vascular disease. But now the paradigm is changing, because now we know that heart failure and renal events are the bigger culprits. So far, we are concentrating only on vascular disease. That's okay, but there is a bigger enemy out there. And again, this is a rather recent paper about 6 months back. And what are the complications a newly diagnosed diabetic get? And you can see here, the blue is the cardiorenal disease, heart failure or CKD. And pink is myocardial infarction somewhere here. So you can see cardiorenal disease, heart failure or CKD, far outweighs or outnumbers the risk of myocardial infarction. That is my take home number one. My most important take home is not that. My most important take home is that there is nobody called a low risk diabetic. We all say, okay, I have diabetes, I'm fine, I don't have any complications. But there is nothing like a low risk diabetic. Talking about a low risk diabetic is maybe equivalent to talking about a perfect husband or a perfect wife. That doesn't exist. So the diabetics, maybe even young people without other risk factors and duration of diabetes less than 10 years, they come under moderate risk. And if they have 3 or more major risk factors, very common in our country, they come under very high risk category. That is my most important take home message. Now, what does diabetes do? Diabetes affects the pump, the plumbing, and the filter. The pump is the heart failure. Plumbing is major adverse cardiovascular events, and filter is the kidneys. And we give a lot of importance to the major adverse cardiovascular events. It is not rightly so, and maybe we should time to think on it. And why all this halabla? Because diabetes and heart disease is very common. Cardiovascular disease exists in more than 1 in 3, I would say maybe more than 1 in 2
சரி,
patients
லைன்ல
with
விட்டு அப்படியே
diabetes
இருக்கீங்களா?
have some cardiovascular disease. And these 1 in 2 patients have CKD. So it is very common. And if you have 1 billion population, maybe say 300 million diabetics, or and then half of them. So our number of people with heart failure, kidney failure, or at risk of these two are huge, humongous. My next important take home today is this. On the left, this is or near simultaneous data from Kerala. One is about hospitalized patient with myocardial
ஸ்கேன்ல
infarction,
ப்ராப்ளம் இருக்கே சார்.
and second is hospital heart
ஸ்கேன்ல
failure
ப்ராப்ளம்
history,
இருக்கே.
hospitalized patient
ஆமா,
with heart
ப்ராப்ளம்
failure.
இருக்கு. ஆனா
So,
அவங்களால
given a
clear-ஆ
choice to
இதுதான்
me or
போடுங்க.
you, they'll say, okay, this is the
இன்ஃபெக்ஷனா
Hobson's
இருக்கலாம், புரி
choice.
கேன்சர்னு
You
டவுட்டா சொல்லியிருக்காங்க.
have to take one.
லிவர்
You
பயாப்சி
have to
பண்ண
take
சொல்லி சொல்லியிருக்காங்க.
MI or heart failure.
பட் ஆனா ஸ்கேன் நார்மலா இல்ல. ஸ்கேன்ல ப்ராப்ளம்
It's
இருக்கு.
better to choose MI
So
because
அது
1
என்னன்னு
year
இப்ப தெரியுது
mortality
நமக்கு.
with MI is about
அது என்னன்னு ஃபர்தர் டெஸ்ட்
5%
பண்ணாதான்
in
தெரியும்.
Kerala, whereas
நீங்க
it
அவங்க
is
டாக்டர்
about
என்ன சொன்னாங்க இப்போ?
30%. That is so much
இல்ல
higher
அவங்க டாக்டர் என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காங்க இப்போ?
in same time in Kerala. So this is hospitalized patient. Even non-hospitalized patient, walking, talking patient, data from Vedanta is about 17 or 18% of people
ஸ்கேன்ல கண்டிப்பா
die
ப்ராப்ளம்
within
இருக்கு.
a year.
ஸோ
So
ஃபர்தரா
that is
சில டெஸ்ட்ல
something
எடுத்தா என்ன
which you
கன்ஃபார்மா
should
சொல்ல முடியும்.
remember. You
இதை வச்சு
should never
கன்ஃபார்ம் சொல்ல முடியாது.
forget.
இதுல ப்ராப்ளம் இருக்குன்னு சொல்லலாம்.
Why are we
எதுக்கு
talking
கன்ஃபார்ம்
about
சொல்ல
heart failure
முடியாது.
and diabetes?
So we
Because
need to
heart
do some additional
failure
test.
is a cardiovascular
Calculate
outcome in
சொல்லுங்க,
diabetes that can no longer be
Right, sir,
ignored.
sure, sir.
This McMurray's famous Lancet Diabetes paper, and it goes on to say that heart failure is one of the most common cardiovascular complications of type 2 diabetes. Heart failure is the most disabling and deadly complication of diabetes. Most patients with heart failure have either diabetes or pre-diabetic dysglycemia, and diabetes is one of the most disabling comorbidities complicating heart failure. So they are inseparable twins, and heart failure begets diabetes, and diabetes begets heart failure. 1998 is the year I joined Apollo. It's special to me in many ways. And as a cricket fan, that was the time when Sachin scored the famous Desert Storm innings in Sharjah. It's arguably one of the greatest one-day international innings of all time. And that was the year where Wikipedia was published. So let me share a cardiologist's view from my perch, how I look at diabetes complications. And I may be wrong, I may be right, but this is my view. So UKPDS came out, and basically what I learned from UKPDS is that vascular disease begins early. By the time the diabetes sets in, it is half time in the game of cardiovascular disease. And there is also data, this Kaushik raised article, about 1% reduction HbA1c reduces baseline risk by good number, about number needed to reach 87. It's the risk reduction is modest compared to BP or LDL, but it is present. So, summary, what I learned is that glycemic control does play a role in reducing cardiovascular complications, and benefit becomes evident only after a long period of time. This is basically cardiovascular, talking about the plumbing part. So what I learned is hit early, hit hard in diabetes. You have to be aggressive early on. If you wait for the complications to come, you and the patient will be doomed. So another my take on diabetes was inspired by one of the youngsters when was talking about diabetes. They said diabetes is a supervillain like Thanos in the Avengers series. So Thanos is a fictional supervillain who can reduce life in the universe by 50% within with six stones called the Infinity Stones. Diabetes is a real life supervillain which can reduce the quantity and quality of life by 50% with six factors. Six Infinity Stones, six factors. Insulin resistance, reduce incretins, reduce insulin production, increase renal glucose uptake, reduce muscle adipose tissue, liver glucose uptake, and increase hepatic gluconeogenesis. So if you are a supervillain, then we have superheroes also. So again, from the Avengers, I tried to give names to the common anti-hyperglycemic drugs. So Iron Man is lifestyle modification. It's the most basic and effective factor against diabetes. Metformin is Thor, only drug which may kill or reverse diabetes in early stage. Insulin is like Hulk, very aggressive and powerful, dangerous if not controlled or titrated. Sulfonylurea is like Captain America, an old and powerful warrior. GLP-1 receptor agonist, the newer kid in the block, like Doctor Strange, can reduce mortality, reduce MACE, reduce renal deterioration, reduce blood pressure, reduce weight, reduce sugars. But heart failure, there's a big question mark there. And again, whether it's a class effect or not, still there is a question. Now comes SGLT2 inhibitors. They're like Captain Marvel. So the most powerful of them all, most effective of them all, and it reduces mortality, reduces heart failure hospitalization, reduce renal deterioration, reduce blood pressure, reduce weight, and reduce sugars. So these are cardiologists, not somewhat scientific, but easy to explain take on the anti-diabetic drugs. Again, as a cardiologist, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid of hypoglycemia more than hyperglycemia because there is a 43% increased risk in relative risk of 3P MACE with hypoglycemic events, 20% increase in the relative risk of cardiovascular event with every event of hypoglycemia. You may think, okay, he had hypoglycemia, we gave him the sugars, he became all right. But the cardiovascular risk increases and increases. And there's a 31% increase in the relative risk of all-cause mortality and 15% increase in relative risk of mortality with every event of hypoglycemia. Again, high blood sugars, you reduce, there is significant benefit. Some people say that, okay, like having high blood sugars, reducing sugars does not do anything to cardiovascular risk reduction. It definitely does. Now we come to the next concept. It's concept called Goldilocks concept. Because Goldilocks concept says too hot or too much, too less, or just right. So what is the Goldilocks principle in glucose lowering? Not too little, not too much. This is very important. Should reduce the blood sugars, should not reduce hypoglycemia. And you should have a perfect combination for this. The newer approaches you can see here, GLP-1 here, alpha glucosidase here, and DPP-4 inhibitors here, and SGLT2 inhibitors here, reduce glucose, and it's got multiple levels of action. These actions are complementary. And you can see here, DPP-4 and SGLT2 inhibitors are like yin and yang, or two pairs of gloves, you can put it like that, or perfectly complementing each other, complementing the strengths of each other. So, and you saw it in the Australia match, Pujara complemented the effort of Gill or Pant, etc. So, the many benefits are complementary. You can see here, insulin-dependent mechanism, insulin-independent mechanism, effect of glucagon, weight neutral, and again, the most important thing, increase GLP-1 levels, reduce fasting blood sugars, minimal or no hypoglycemia. This Goldilocks principle, neither too hot, neither too less. And again, the biggest drawback or fear of doctors is genital infection, SGLT inhibitors, and adding DPP-4 may reduce the incidence of genital tract infection. So coming back to Marvel Universe, where does gliptins or DPP-4 inhibitors stand? I call them equal to Black Widow. Individually, it's not a superpower. There are many other drugs which are more powerful, but adds tremendous value to the team, tremendous skill as an assassin, and she's got pivotal role in the end game. So now coming to this combination makes the perfect Avengers team to defeat the super
good
villain
evening.
that is diabetes or Thanos in
Yeah,
the
tell me,
Avengers
please tell me.
universe. So there are many barriers or which result in clinical inertia.
Yeah, see,
That
actually,
includes people
our
think fear of side
wife
effects,
is working in
hypoglycemia,
Capstone
weight
Clinic.
gain, complicated
Everybody hear me?
insulins, too many medicines, treatment cost, and lack of awareness. And again,
See,
fear of
actually,
harm,
the person who called our wife, she's
guidelines,
working in
pill
Capstone Clinic.
burden. All
Capstone
these
Clinic is
things
Dr.
contribute to
the famous
our
physician
clinical
in
inertia
Apollo.
in
They have got a
starting
separate center.
SGLT2
அங்க work
inhibitors
பண்ணாங்க.
or
He
DPP-4
is in
or
Bombay,
their
I believe.
combination.
So
This
he
is a
frequently comes there and
major
goes.
thing.
Daughter and
So
இவங்க
diabetes
இருக்காங்க.
burden. What is the
So அதான்
burden
he
of
was saying.
diabetes?
So
Economic burden
they said
is
they
the,
like the flat. நிறைய
the
பேர் வந்து
cost of
பார்த்தாங்க.
diabetes.
But even then
You
he
can
said he
say
liked the flat. He
is the
wanted to
cause of
immediately
its
move and
complications. So the
I said I gave you
complications
a
of
number.
heart
Since he
failure,
came close, I said okay,
MI,
facing and I
renal
told him.
failure, peripheral artery
He might be
disease.
calling you,
All these
or you can
things
call him
are
also.
much more
So
than the
corporate,
cost of diabetes treatment alone. So you should look at the
maybe
cost and the
mostly
cost
it must be
effectiveness.
like
And when
400.
you make the person aware of the cost effectiveness of this
Mostly it must
combination,
be her only.
then you will be doing a good thing for the patient. The cost of
Yeah,
treatment is
yeah,
7 times
that's
higher
fair enough.
renal and cardiac complication in
After you
patients with
discuss, we'll
diabetes.
decide.
So the whole
Okay?
point is prevention, and
No,
SGLT inhibitors not
no.
only treats but is also very effective in preventing cardiac and renal deterioration. So do we need an agent with established cardiorenal profile? Yes, this combination is fantastic for it. Now, let me have a summary of the benefits of SGLT2 inhibitor plus DPP4 combination.
No.
It's a huge number, can see the mechanisms, it's independent
Yeah,
of the
yeah, yeah,
pancreatic
yeah.
beta cell function.
So you
There
talk
is
to her.
significant reduction in HbA1c, that is the efficacy part,
Yeah,
reduce
yeah.
cardiovascular renal risk factors, and
நான் நேரா
renal
போகுதுங்க
outcomes
phone
also
and
reduced.
and then discuss with them.
Safety is the most
I thought
important
first
thing.
let them talk to you.
Non-overlapping
The terms and everything is
toxicities,
okay, then we'll
no
see them in
increase in
person.
cardiovascular events, weight gain or hypoglycemia.
Okay.
Hypoglycemia is very important. No drug-to-drug interaction between
24,
SGLT2
24.
inhibitor and DPP4, and can be used with
24 I had quoted.
other class of antidiabetic
So,
drugs.
so
Oral
we can
administration
discuss about
possible.
maintenance.
So let me
1330
look
maintenance.
at a cardiologist viewpoint of diabetic development
Yeah.
over time. Dr. Prasanna Kumar is there. He's
I
the
told 1.5
doyen
lakhs.
of
Now 1.5 lakhs
endocrinology,
சொல்லிருக்காங்க.
so he will see his viewpoint. But till
So roughly 6
2008,
months.
as far as I was concerned,
6
I'm
months. 6
concerned,
months will be okay.
HbA1c
Yeah.
lower the better was the theory. Then came 2 trials and we said, oh, may not be, not too
Yeah.
much. But 2008
10 months,
onwards, lower the
Yeah,
better,
but
but
COVID
without
has
weight
been
gain,
active there.
hypoglycemia and side effects. But last few years, we
Yeah.
have become
Yeah, you talk
more
to her and then get back to
ambitious,
me. Then we'll find
and
out.
we have become
Yeah.
more aware,
Sure.
and
Thank
we
you.
know
Okay.
what is good for the patient. So that includes cardiorenal risk reduction, blood pressure reduction, glucose lowering with agents of proven safety and efficacy. So this is a like very busy slide comparing the effects or comparing the effects of various drugs. But the guidelines say that, in this also from the Kidney International, when you select a treatment of diabetic patients with high cardiovascular risk, and as I said before, there is no low risk diabetic patient, and while choosing the drug, while choosing the drug, the effects on cardiovascular renal outcomes should also be considered. And on top of metformin, SGLT inhibitors and DPP4 are the 2 drug classes that lower HbA1c without any major side effects. And both classes of drugs have also robust evidence of cardiorenal toxicity, renal safety, evidence cardiovascular safety. So, in short, I'm trying to conclude. This is a very important slide as far as I'm concerned, because this is diabetics with heart failure. This is in US. We can say here the uptake of DPP4 is comparatively much less. And the uptake of SGLT2 inhibitors are also much less. And this is a crying shame. And partly it is because of the cost. Now we have gone a long way in controlling that. So I conclude by saying, knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. Thank you very much for patient hearing.
Thank you very much, sir. I think that was really a very marvelous presentation, avenging type 2 diabetes from the cardio perspective. I think the audience must have really appreciated the take, how you have presented. So to all the audience, I think this would be a lot of time to understand and a lot of questions that may come to your mind. You have a chat box on the screens that is in front of you. Please put in your questions in the chat box. We'll be presenting the questions to both the experts at the end of the session of Dr. Prasanna Kumar sir. So now I welcome Dr. Prasanna Kumar sir to take us through what is the newer SGLT-DPP combination that has come up in terms of remogliflozin, vildagliptin, and the evidence with the expertise of how do we introduce the SGLT-based regimen. Dr. Prasanna Kumar sir, over to you for your talk.
Thank you, sir. Please give me share screen. There you are. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting on rimogliflozin and vildagliptin combination. I should thank Dr. Abraham Oman for an excellent, very illustrious talk. First time I have heard a talk by cardiologist with so many illustrations, giving examples, as you said, which anybody can understand. I think what he has told you exactly is true, how he has compared different treatment for it and about the cardiac risk and how drugs can reduce it. Thank you for a very nice introduction, how it acts, where it should use. So my job has been much, much easier. This is my disclaimer for the talk. Then today what I'm going to talk some of the data about rimogliflozin and vildagliptin. What is this combination? Is there any Indian study? How useful it is? Where do you place? Most important, as Dr. Abraham Oman has said, that where do you position the drug is not enough of knowledge, but the wisdom, how to use it, where to use it, when to use it. That is very important. So I'm going through this and what is the data and scientific data that we have got to say that this is a good combination. So this is what the rimogliflozin vildagliptin scientific rationale for this. This is one where you see the comparative efficacy of head-to-head comparison with dapagliflozin compared to the rimogliflozin. Rimogliflozin, as you know, is 100 mg twice a day. Dapa is given once a day. And on the other side, we have got sitagliptin compared to vildagliptin. Let us look at the data. When you have head-to-head comparison between the DAPA as well as rimogliflozin, as you can see, HbA1c reduction is almost equally same. Fasting blood sugar reduction and the target HbA1c 38 versus 46. Of course, statistically it is not significant. You can't say one is better than that. Suffice it to say that rimogliflozin 100 mg twice is as good as DAPA 10 mg once. Again, if you compare sitagliptin compared to vildagliptin, A1C reduction, fasting, and the target is 39-40%. That means non-inferiority, not that any one is better than the other. Now, as you see that all these the SGLT2 inhibitors are approved in India, Cana, DAPA, Yampa, and Remo. As you can see how the curve is moving in 2020 from May to October, as you can see some of the SGLT2 inhibitors are increasing because maybe of the cost, and some of them have remained same or come down. Now look at the various DPP4 inhibitors. Same thing if you see Sita versus Lina and teneligliptin. As you can see here, this is how the curve of the usage also. That means if the usage is increased, the acceptability among the physicians, acceptability among the patients also should be good. That is how any drug will have its place and goes on increasing in its use when the physicians and patients are comfortable. Let us try to see what is the difference between Remo and Vilda, what is common between the two. Remo also is given twice a day, 100 mg twice. Vilda is also given 50 mg twice a day. Both of them have minimum CIP interaction potential. Both of them have similar pharmacokinetic profile, Tmax and others. And both of them have potent pharmacodynamic action. Let us look at it. So regulations require demonstration of number of drug-to-drug interaction between rimogliflozin and vildagliptin when you use it in combination. Do you have that data? That is why an open label, balanced, randomized, two treatment, two sequence, two period crossover single dose oral bioequivalence study of fixed dose single tablet of Remo plus Vilda versus Remo and Vilda as a separate tablet is given. The 28 patients, that is sufficient. You don't have to see large number. Healthy volunteers were taken, and you see Remo and Vilda in one tablet, Remo and Vilda separate tablet, and there was crossover. What did this study show? If you see here, rimogliflozin alone, and you see in combination when you use, when see fixed dose combination with this individual, I can see here the pharmacokinetic studies are not different, meaning both the group what you have got here are same, whether it is Remo and Vilda separately or Remo and Vilda in combination. Both of them show the pharmacokinetics studies show it is similar, so that means it is safe to combine the rimogliflozin and vildagliptin in the same drug action. So Remo and Vilda fixed dose was found to be bioequivalent with the single tablets of Remo and Vilda. No drug-drug interaction was seen between these two drugs. Then this is a study which I want to show you. That is forever study. What is this forever pivotal phase 2 trial for registration as such. And why it is called forever? FDC fixed the combination of remogliflozin, vildagliptin for efficacy and tolerability. And this is how it's a robust study design with active comparator, where it's a randomized, controlled, double-blind, double-dummy, parallel group, and there are multi-centric with 23 sites as such. And the study drug was removed with Vilda fixed drug combination. Active comparator was Empagliflozin, which is already established, and efficacy and safety evaluation parameters. Study population was Indian population also. This is how there is a screening, then 2 weeks randomization. One group went into Remo plus Vilda, another went into Remo, Yampa and linagliptin. As such, again a fixed drug. And the study was done 16 weeks, and there was 2 weeks of follow-up. What does the study disposition shows? 321 screen, 182 randomized, 91 each. The number of withdrawn was similar, safety population was same, and this is how both of them are comparable, equal number in both. If you look at baseline characters, male, female, age, height, EGFR, baseline A1C, and fasting PP, they were all comparable, meaning the two groups of Empalina was comparable to Removilda in their baseline characters. Then look at the A1C reduction at 6 weeks, 12 weeks, and 16 weeks. As you see that it is similar, except that you see in the case of Removilda combination, A1C reduction was much earlier, 6 weeks. Otherwise, at the end of 16 weeks, they were same non-inferiority of Removilda combination compared to Empalina combination. So Removilda fixed drug combination was demonstrated to be non-inferior to Yampa and linagliptin. As you know, the cost of Lina and Yampa is very high compared to Remo and Vilda, which is cost effective. Now, if you see A1C reduction, it is the same. As you can see, the curves are same, except at the end of 6 weeks, the reduction in the A1C was much earlier, better in the Removilda compared to Yampa as such and Lina as such. Then otherwise, the glycemic effects at 6 weeks, 12 weeks, and 16 weeks, the same HbA1c reduction. If you see fasting blood sugar reduction, same in both the groups. If you look postprandial reduction, again it is same. There is no significant statistical difference between the two groups, meaning that even if you take the body weight, again 1.6 kg, meaning that both the drugs were similar in their efficacy, and the Vilda and Remo combination showed non-inferiority to empagliflozin as well as linagliptin. So also blood pressure reduction was same in both the groups. And if you see uric acid is one of the markers of it, again uric acid reduction at 16 weeks almost similar in both the groups. Then adverse events, if you see total adverse events, drug related and adverse events of interest like genitourinary, all of them are same. Nobody can claim the other one is better or inferior or anything. If you look at it, all of us know that whether empagliflozin or remogliflozin, the two problems is genital and urinary infection. Again, it was similar in both the groups as such, and hypoglycemia is similar, and pruritus was also similar. So one of the things you should remember, when you use SGLT2 inhibitors with the DLP1 ICTC, then you see there is an advantage. Certain disadvantage are reduced by Lina. Same thing Remo and Vilda, because genital infection will be less when you compare SGLT2 inhibitors with the gliptin as such. That's why you see when you take Yampa, Remo separate and combination with DPP4 inhibitors, you will see definitely the infection is much less compared to other studies, national and international as such. This is what we see. The special interest is hypoglycemia, urinary genital infections as such. As you can see, there is no significant difference between the two. Both are equally having the same side effects.
Thank you so much.
If you look at lipid profile as such, total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, HDL cholesterol compared to the two drug combination. Again, triglyceride and ratio of triglyceride and the total cholesterol HDL ratio and the ratio of LDL and HDL ratio. As you can see, both of them are comparable, but favorable reduction observed in the lipid profile of the Remo plus Vilda compared to Yampa and Lina. It may be that it's a chance like that. Otherwise, you see, most of them have the same advantage or what. Again, if you see liver function test, serum bilirubin, that ALT, OTPT, and others, you will see even the alkaline phosphatase gamma GT, the liver markers as such. Again, both of them show that all these, the hepatotoxicity or liver effect is not much. Both of them are equally safe, even in patients who have got a hepatic dysfunction. No adverse effect on liver parameters with rimovildar comparable to Empalina, both are safe. So the summary of phase 3 for our trial is rimovildar fixed dose combination was demonstrated to be efficacious agent, non-inferior to Empalina, p-value 0.01, and FTG showed early reduction of ANC as compared to monocomponent but comparable to the other FDCs, that is EMPA and LINA. Then the LINA, the vildagliptin and rimogliptin FTC was shown significantly reduced all glycemic as well as non-glycemic parameters. I showed you the repeat profile as well as the weight, which is comparable to EMPA and LINA as such. So also the Remount Bina FTC has good safety profile, well tolerated compared to Empandina, and it showed favorable effects on lipid and lipid parameters compared to the other one. Now, once we have seen these small studies from FDC, we are convinced that the data safety is there and again comparable to others. Where do you use this combination? How do you use it? Remogliflozin based regimens, Indian managements are, you can use remogliflozin alone or remo plus metformin and remo with vildagliptin. You have got three choices such when you have got these drugs. So important thing is what are the candidates for initiation? Then how do you select the drug? How when you before starting safety concern? How you continue on long term? First thing is how do you initiate? Type 2 diabetes patient with high risk of CV disease, just now Professor Abraham Oman has shown you who are the high risk. Diabetic as such is the higher risk for heart disease and CKD irrespective HbA1c. Today we have data to show that the SGLT2 inhibitors can be used in patients of non-diabetic having heart failure and even patients with even non-diabetic with renal failure. So some of the SGLT2 inhibitors are approved for non-diabetic heart failure and non-diabetic renal failure also. Then, irrespective of the HbA1c, you can introduce this drug. A1C, individualized target. When you have not reached the target, then you can add this. Then, individualized target when higher than this. This is where you initiate these patients. Then, where do you use the Remo plus metformin? Drug naive patient A1C more than 7.5 or metformin failure more than 7. If the A1C is less than 7, single drug metformin is sufficient. Even at the beginning of disease, when you detect diabetes today, if A1C 7.5 to 8.5, single drug metformin will not. You have to use two drugs, and that way metformin and Remo is good because it helps in reducing weight. Again, patients, where to use remogliflozin and vildagliptin? Patients are already on metformin plus SGLT2, A1C more than 7. Today target according to Indian as well as international guidelines should be less than 7, whereas American Association of Clinical Endocrinology suggests the target should be 6.5. So if it is more than 7 with the SGLT2 metformin, then in such a situation, then you want to have patients where patient is only on metformin, even say more than 8, then you can start Remo plus vildagliptin. Then where do you use remogliflozin alone? Where patient is only on metformin, he has not reached the target. So second line of drug is metformin and so you can use remogliflozin as a second line of therapy or a third line of therapy when patient is on metformin or when is on other drugs. You can use remogliflozin as a first line of therapy when the patient cannot tolerate metformin. Or even if patient is on metformin, once they get to renal failure, when the A1C is high, and again you will see that the creatinine clearance or EGFR is high, you can definitely initiate hemogliflozin. As of now data, even up to 30 EGFR, you can give remogliflozin. Below 30, it is not approved. Two more studies will come in 2022, one with 25 EGFR, another is 20. Maybe by that time, SGLT2 inhibitors will be probably approved even up to EGFR 20 as such. Then how do you select the drug? We have finished. And what precaution you take when you initiate them? Stable clinical hemodynamic status, initial GGFR, lower is for urinary and genital infection because I told you that. Peripheral vascular status, it does not matter much. Actually, that is only canagliflozin which showed that to peripheral vascular disease, only small vessel amputation. Other SGLT2 inhibitors did not show any increased of amputation peripheral vascular disease. Insulin status of the patient, because if it is type 1, even now it is not approved because SGLT2 inhibitors can cause what is known as euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis. Even when the blood sugar is less than 200, patient can go to ketoacidosis. That's why if they have that, you don't use SGLT2 in type 1. Liver enzyme within the normal range. Then how do you manage this patient when you give the prescription? How do you counsel? Counsel them about genital hygiene, perineal hygiene, and orthostatic hypertension, foot examination, symptoms of decay, signs of genital infection. I don't think other than genital and urinary infection, you don't need to see. I have not seen orthostatic hypertension, and regularly we do foot examination, that is sufficient. None of the SGLT2 inhibitors cause today after all the data that there is any need to worry about peripheral vascular disease. Anticipatory drug changes, reduction in dose of diet. You should be careful. Many times patient has congestive heart failure, renal failure. They use it. Some of them may go into dehydration. So once you start SGLT2, you can reduce diet if necessary. And reduction of insulin dosage. We have seen many patients, when even patients on metformin insulin, when we use SGLT2 inhibitors, 10 to 12 units of reduction in insulin happens. We have published that data also. Then how do you monitor the patient who are on SGLT2 long run? Follow-up monitoring renal function, hepatic function, body weight, blood pressure, and genital infection. Then ensure comprehensive treatment, monitor pancreatitis, ensure lifestyle modification, multidisciplinary care like renal, hepatic, and cardiac. So this is how today, when we started SGLT2 inhibitors 3 years back, then we said it is only diabetologists who use it or endocrinologists. Later on, just like Human said, no, it's a cardiologist drug because diabetes is a vascular disease. So cardiologist does it. Today, we see that many of them, the nephrologist is telling, sorry, it is not just cardiologist doing it also. It is our drug. So nephrologists use it more. I'm not surprised tomorrow even the gastroenterologist may say this is our drug. So like that, how you see profile. What started as a diabetic drug is accepted by cardiologists like Professor Abraham Oman, accepted by nephrologists. Tomorrow it will be accepted by gastroenterologist, physician, everybody. This is how SGLT2 inhibitors have taken this place and it has changed the scene in the last year. Thank you for your patient listening. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Prasanna Kumar sir. I think that really was a very rounded deliberation on what is the data available with Demographic and your experience on how to initiate and take this combination and this therapy forward. Also underlining what Dr. Abraham Umar sir said, that we should not think but do it. I think that really concludes the way for all benefit of all the audience. So we have questions now, sir, from the audiences that we will be posing to you. So I think the Avengers stories really worked out well for the audience. So we have a question that shall all patients be started with the SGLT2 based regimen if there is no low risk T2DM? Probably something the first start that you made.
Like it was in a perfect world, yes. But unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world. So we have to take care of multiple things, including like I will tell different examples. An 85-year-old person comes with a new onset diabetes. Or he may have some cardiac issues also. Unless he has got heart failure to reduce the cardiovascular event, I may not. So you should look at the quality of life and quantity of life. And also look at the cost and cost effectiveness. So if a person just cannot afford, then like maybe in the future the cost will come down and down and down like the statins. But as I said before, initially, In a perfect world, maybe, but we don't live in that. So, and that's what I showed in US data also. Only less than 5% in US diabetic with heart failure get that. And India may, but we are improving. And with doyens like Prasanna Omar sir pushing the thing, like definitely we are improving. And that's all I can say. Dr. Prasanna Omar sir?
Yes, sir. So your
See,
opinion.
first thing is in a very elderly person, as Dr. Abraham Oman said, I'm little worried because if elderly person take, they don't have much perception of thirst. So if they take SGLT2 inhibitors, there is a problem they are going to dehydration. That is one thing one you should remember. As Dr. Abraham Oman said, you should always look at the age and what is the risk and all that. Every guidelines in the world says metformin is the first drug and the best drug. Only one guidelines in the world, European Society of Cardiology said that in a patient with cardiovascular atherosclerosis risk, that you should do SGLT2 inhibitors in over and above metformin, even before metformin. This is not a diabetologist guideline. It's a European Society of Cardiology. There was no diabetologist in that. If you see, we treat diabetes last 40 years. So that's how they must have said. But it is improving because even non-diabetic, there is a study to show even non-diabetic, they have used where there is heart failure. Heart failure, according to me, is something like a cancer because even if you see survival rate 5 years, it is so less. So you have to treat aggressively in that. I don't treat heart failure. If a patient says, I'm not the best person to treat, I will also say, please go to cardiologist, he will help. My job is to treat them. If metformin contraindication doesn't come, it is only metformin is not tolerated. 20% do not tolerate metformin, even in day-to-day practice. 500 mg, they have nausea, vomiting. In such situation, SGLT2 inhibitors are first. 60% of our patients are obese. So that way, they are not. One genital or urinary infection is not a contraindication for SGLT2. If they have repeated genital urinary tract infection, then only it is contraindicated. Otherwise, you can definitely use SGLT2 inhibitor. So ultimately, it comes to a point when a patient is in front of you, you decide. Now, as Dr. Abraham Oman said, cost. If you see cost of what we thought today, empagliflozin Lisa cost 75 rupees. If you see the newer SGLT2 inhibitors, it is coming down. It almost comes to 10 to 15 rupees today. Most of them can afford all this. I'm sure in few days it will be generics also will be available by them. So cost is coming down. Only thing that cost comes from medicine. Everything goes up as such. So affordability will improve, cost will come down. Ultimately discuss with the patient. This is the advantage, this is the disadvantage. This is the cost, can afford. EST says individualize that depending on the age, the socioeconomic state, hypoglycemia risk, and cardiovascular renal profile. Then you decide whether this is the best drug I'm giving to the patient, and it is only the physician who can decide.
Right. I think that was really very elaborately explained, sir. I think that really makes sense that in an idealistic scenario, yes, but all the experience that Dr. Prasad also really put in what patients can be this be used. And the interesting question, sir, I think Dr. Prasad also you can address this question. It says in patients with high HbA1c more than 10, do we start with insulin only or can use this combination?
That is a very good question. When the HbA1c is more than 10, never start SGLT2 inhibitors. Why? For the simple reason, as it is more than 10 is glycosuria, then there is more chances of that. Again, they are more likely to get into the dehydration adult. So never start SGLT2 inhibitors when HbA1c is more than 10. Now, all the guidelines in the world, EAST, ADA, anything you take, all of them say HbA1c more than 10, you should start using. But in practice, it never happens. Even up to 11, you can use oral anti-diabetic drug if it's not so symptomatic. Today, after COVID, I'm seeing patients with 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 18, 20 HbA1c also they are coming. They are SGLT2, they are diabetics and they are absolutely asymptomatic. Sir, it is 18. What has happened? Everybody's HbA1c has worsened because of lack of diet and lack of exercise, overeating and all that. So more than 10, you can start metformin or sulfonylurea, anything. Once the HbA1c comes down, then we don't want to use much sulfonylurea, causes hypoglycemia, increasing weight. So wait for 1 or 2 or 3 weeks, at least when the blood sugars are down to below 200. When it is 250, 300, A1C 11, don't use SGLT2 because they are going to worsen their symptoms of polyuria and others. So wait for some time. It is not the first time. You have to choose between either sulfonylurea, metformin. They can bring down 11 to 7 also. Fantastic. Most economical drug today is also metformin sulfonylurea. Use it. It comes down. You don't want to continue sulfonylurea hypoglycemia. Then you can add HB. Or you start insulin. HbA1c is 10 or 11. I say buy one disposable pen. Within 1 month, I will stop insulin, start metformin, increase it, then add when blood sugar control, SGLT2 inhibitors or gliptin. They are fantastic content. This is this one. A newly detected diabetic, more than 11, I start insulin. Less than 11, I ask them if he is willing to take insulin. If he has lost weight, insulin is the best. If you use SGLT2, he will lose further weight. We don't want that. So you have to individualize, talk to patient, discuss. This is what is called.
Right. Thank you, sir. I think that addresses even the other question was on sulfonylureas. I think one more question has come from a very clinical perspective, Dr. Oman sir, that how to identify patients of HF risk with near normal HbA1c. Very interesting questions, brother. What do you think?
Okay, this is something which is very important because, like, again, heart failure, when you imagine heart failure, we imagine a person who is huffing, puffing, pedal edema, ventilator, but big majority may not be so. They may have some exertional fatigue, exertional breathlessness. That will be attributed. Generally, people slow down. So this is one situation where you have to go and look for it. Sometimes it may not be so much evident. How do you look for it? One, have a talk with the patient. Somebody says, I've been walking 5 kilometers. Now I'm walking, I have reduced. I'm walking only 2 kilometers. Then you should look for it. Then the clinical aspect, if you're not unable to lie down. Some people say, I cannot sleep. So you may think that may be due to stress, but it may be orthopnea. The next is the most important thing. That is clinical examination and an echo. Echo, please ask your echocardiographer or whoever at the center, look for certain features. Ejection fraction is less than 40, it is easy. If there's an MI, it is easy. But between 40 to 60, it's not that easy. So please, this may save the life of your patients. And some of them may be your near and dear ones. So ask for simple things. It doesn't cost a pie extra. Ask your echocardiographer, please look for left atrial enlargement, left ventricular hypertrophy, pulmonary hypertension, and there's something called E by E prime, which is the filling pressures of the heart. Almost every echo machine in the country now has the facility to do that. And if it's a little more advanced, we would do what is called a global longitudinal strain. And this will pick up subtle heart failure thing. And there's a recent publication which showed that about 20% of the newly detected diabetics, otherwise normal, otherwise do not have any problems at all, had low longitudinal strain, that is systolic dysfunction. So look for it. Then if they're still, sometimes you may think the patient is having asthma, COPD, do an NT-proBNP because it costs little bit. The clinical examination costs nothing. Echo also is quite cheap. NT-proBNP may cost a little bit more, but look and you shall see. And if you see, then you will save the life of the patient. That is my message.
It's rightly well said, sir. Look and you shall see. I think that is what would be the tagline for it. The next question is, sir, I think would be to both. That is the genital mycotic infections truly lower with the combination? Dr. Kumar, sir, would you like to start, sir?
Yeah, definitely. Totally. This is one of the advantages. There are already studies to show that if an SGLT2 inhibitors alone, 3 to 5% of genital and urinary infection. If we add the gliptin as such, it comes down. What is the reason why? There are many advantages. I don't want to go into details. That maybe that immunological response improves when you are using DPP4 inhibitor. That is why the infection is less, and even real world data is also available. That is why you should use SGLT2 with a gliptin is a beautiful combination because the side effects are less. There's a synergistic effect also. If you see SGLT2 inhibitors increase the glucagon level, it increases blood sugar. Whereas when you use gliptin, they reduce the glucagon level. So like that, there are 5 to 6 advantages. One of the things, data available, real world, even the basic, even Indian, that will have this combination, genital mycotin infection definitely less.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir. I think the next question, I think, is a question or a comment. It just says, a metformin, remo, vildagliptin be a cocktail therapy for all. I'm not sure how do we interpret it. So your comments on this part.
There is nothing like a cocktail and all that. See, all these cocktail are those who do not understand the whole basic. If you see diabetes, initially we thought there are only two things: insulin deficiency, insulin resistance. Simple. If you use metformin, then you know hepatic glucose output. Then we know SGLT2 inhibitor. Then we got the renal mechanism. Then we got the hepatic. Then we got the muscle. Then we got so. Now what was started as insulin deficiency or insulin resistance? There was octate, then hexate, now dirty dozen also. There are 12 things which will cause. So there is nothing like one combination which is going to solve all the problems. Now you start one and then say this is it, then you say second, then you see. That is why it is a multi-pronged attack. Out of 12, suppose you see 3 drugs, let us say metformin, SGLT2 and gliptin, they are going to answer probably 6 to 8 things out of 12. So this combination is going to solve so many things. That does not mean you should have 3 drugs, 4 drugs, 5 drugs and all. No, because you need to do, like I told you, pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic study to see whether combination is as good as two separate, whether side effects are less, are they stable physically, chemically. So unless you do that, so that is why I don't like much of triple combination. I don't mind using triple combination in hypertension, but not in diabetes. Again, many times they come with combination. God only knows what is the drug. I have to look at Google and search what is this drug. Sir, you don't know. I don't know. There are 65,000 companies, 200 million probably drugs combination in this country. We are not an encyclopedia. So that is why I don't like many combination. Two drug combination diabetes is all right. Most often 2 drugs for hypertension. Rarely I use 3 drugs.
Oh, thank you, sir. Another last question, sir. This is what I have with me is changes to be made to ongoing anti-HF therapy when SGLT is introduced. Dr. Oman, sir, I think if you can help with that question.
Yeah, I think SGLT2 inhibitors have established itself to be one of the pillars of heart failure treatment, and now there are the concept is that start SGLT2 inhibitors and beta blockers early and maybe first, then go for ARNI, then go for MRAs. So that is the the comprehensive therapy. And one thing, again, one tagline kind of thing. If you give these 4 drugs together, these fundamental drugs, that is 4 drugs, 5 mechanisms, you save 6 years of life. So 4, 5, 6. And remember, Toronto heart failure registry, like 30% were dead in a year and 60% were dead in 4.5 years. And you were hospitalized patient. Metanda registry, so 18% were walking with outpatients with heart failure were dead within a year. And it is not even, it's actually worse than most cancers. So give them 4 drugs, 5 mechanisms, you have 6 years extension of life. And very few drugs can claim extension of life.
Right. But any changes to be made to the ongoing therapy, or it can be added directly? I mean, that question also
Yeah,
says changes to be made.
again, it's very simple because SGLT inhibitors are one group of drugs which can be added without worrying about blood pressure. It reduces blood pressure only by 2 to 3 millimeters. Not worrying about stepping up. There's only one dose. So one dose, like same dose, no stepping up, no hyperkalemia, no worsening of renal function. So multiple advantages.
Thank you, sir. So those were the questions that we had from the audiences. We actually also are very close to 9 o'clock our ending time. But I take this opportunity, first of all, to both our experts, Dr. Oman sir and Dr. Prashna Kumar sir, for your very interesting and lucid presentations. I think the audience will must have really appreciated today's sessions to take us through the need and what we have with this new combination of Rebus metacryptic. So on the behalf of the audience, I'd like to thank both our experts to be a part of this meeting. And likewise, I think I am thank the audience to be a part of this CME program for Remote Vildagliptin combination and being with us and presenting good questions and being a part of this entire session. So with this, I would like to conclude this session with permission from both our experts. And there is a small AV video for the launch of this new combination of Remote Vildagliptin. My team, I would request my team to launch that video for the audience.
As famously said by Steve Jobs, great things in business are never done by one person. They are done by a team of people. At Glenmark, we have been working together